Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ziyad, MBBS, MD in Health Informatics. In this tutorial series, we are going to discuss infection and pathophysiology of tuberculosis. TB spreads exclusively through airborne transmission, person to person. This is not a contact disease. You do not catch TB by touching someone or sharing their dishes. It is entirely spread through the air. Here is what happens. When a person with active pulmonary TB talks, coughs, sneezes, laughs, or sings, they release tiny particles called droplet nuclei into the air. These droplet nuclei are extremely small, typically between 1 and 5 micrometers in diameter. Now here is an important distinction. Larger respiratory droplets fall quickly on the ground. Gravity takes them down within a few feet of the source. But smaller droplet nuclei remain suspended in the air for extended periods of time. They can float across a room and be inhaled by a susceptible person standing on the other side. The risk of inhaling these infectious particles depend on three factors: how much time the susceptible person spends on the same airspace as the infectious person, how close they are to them, and how well ventilated the room is. This is why TB isolation rooms are specifically designed with the negative air pressure to prevent contaminated air from flowing into the hallway. And this is why, and I cannot stress this enough, when you enter the room of a patient with suspected or confirmed active TB, you must wear an N95 particulate respirator, not a standard surgical mask. Pathophysiology. Let's follow the TB bacterium step by step through the body and understand exactly what it does. Let's walk through primary TB infection as a process flow, because understanding the sequence helps you to understand both the disease and the treatment. Step 1. Inhalation. A susceptible person breathes in the mycobacteria in the form of airborne droplet nuclei. Remember, these particles are tiny enough to bypass the upper airway defenses and travel all the way down to the lower respiratory tract. Step 2. Alveolar deposition. The bacteria settle on the alveoli, the tiny air sacs deep in the lung where gas exchange occurs. There they begin multiply. Step 3. Dissemination. The bacilli are picked up by the lymphatic system and transported via the bloodstream to other parts of the body, the kidneys, the bones, the cerebral cortex, and the upper lobes of the lungs. This is why TB can affect so many different organ systems. Step 4. The immune response. The body recognizes the invader and launches an inflammatory reaction. Phagocytes, especially neutrophils and macrophages, engulf many of the bacteria. TB-specific lymphocytes then destroy both the bacilli and some surrounding normal tissue. Step 5. Bronchopneumonia. This tissue reaction leads to the accumulation of exudate in the alveoli, causing bronchopneumonia. The lung becomes inflamed and partially consolidated. Now here's a critical timing fact. The initial infection typically occurs 2 to 10 weeks after the exposure. This has major implications for contact tracing because someone who was exposed may not show a positive skin test result for up to 10 weeks. Now let's talk about what happens next. And this is truly fascinating immunology. In response to the infection, the body forms granulomas. These are organized collection of immune cells, especially walls built around the bacteria to contain them. Live and dead bacilli are surrounded by macrophages that form a tight protective barrier. Over time, this structure becomes fibrous tissue mass, and its central portion is called the gone tubercle. Inside the gone tubercle, the bacteria and macrophages undergo necrosis. They literally die and break down, forming a characteristic cheesy-looking material called caseous necrosis. The caseous literally means cheese-like. This caseous mass may eventually become calcified, turning into a collagenous scar. On a chest X-ray, you can sometimes see these calcified gone foci as small, dense opacities, usually in the lower lobes. These are evidence of a prior primary infection that was successfully contained. At this point, the bacteria become dormant. They are alive but not actively dividing. The person has latent TB infection. They have no symptoms. They are not contagious. And approximately 90% of infected individuals, 90% will remain in the latent state for life, never developing active disease, but the remaining 10% will go on to develop active TB at some point, particularly if their immune system is ever compromised. So, what triggers the progression from latent infection to active disease? Active TB can develop in three main ways. First, through a compromised or inadequate immune response. If the immune system weakens due to HIV, cancer treatment, malnutrition, aging, or high dose corticosteroids, the macrophages can no longer contain the bacteria inside the granuloma and the infection reactivates. Second, through reinfection. If a person with latent TB is exposed again to a large inoculum of Mycobacterium tuberculosis from an external source, they can develop active disease. Third, through spontaneous reactivation of dormant bacteria. This is called reactivation TB or adult type progressive TB. When the gone tubercle ulcerates, the cheesy caseous material is released directly into the bronchi. These bacteria now have the access to the airway. They become airborne and can be inhaled by others. The ulcerated tubercle heals and forms a scar tissue, but the surrounding lung becomes progressively more inflamed and more tubercles form. Without treatment, this process spreads downward to the hilum of the lungs and then adjacent lobes. The disease is characterized by long periods of remission when it appears to calm down, followed by sudden period of renewed activity. This is a slow, relentless progression if left untreated. So if you have any issues, you can contact me using my WhatsApp and email provided in the description. Please subscribe my channel and stay with me. Thank you.